The sun poured into the room as I tried to tidy up our house in preparation for some upcoming renovations. As I cleared away a few items, I stumbled upon an old box tucked away in the corner of the office. It was dusty and neglected, as if it had been waiting for someone to discover its contents. Thinking it might hold some useful documents, I approached it with curiosity. When I opened the box, the musty smell of aged paper filled the air. I began to sift through the documents, hoping to find something important. Instead, I came across a stack of yellow letters tied together with a colorful ribbon. My curiosity got the better of me, and I unwrapped one of the letters. At first, I didn't comprehend what I was looking at, but soon it became clear. These were unsent love letters written by my wife, Amy, to her ex-boyfriend, Jake. My heart raced, and my breath caught in my throat. Every word, every confession brimming with affection and longing, reflected an intimacy I thought we shared. As I continued reading the letters, disbelief quickly morphed into a roiling fury that surged through my veins. Amy's words spilled onto the pages with an intensity I had never experienced before, as if each letter had been carefully crafted to unravel my world. She wrote about her feelings for Jake with such raw honesty that it felt like a direct assault on everything we had built together. "I miss you," she had written. "I think about the moments we shared all the time. You made me feel alive." Each sentence pierced through my heart, and I could feel the heat rising in my chest as anger and humiliation fought for dominance. Did she feel this way about him? Had our years together meant so little to her? I clenched my fists, trying to suppress the wave of emotions threatening to engulf me. Every line was a painful reminder that I was not the only one who had occupied a special place in her heart. My mind raced with memories, our late-night talks, our shared laughter, the dreams we had woven together. But now, as I read her words dripping with affection for another man, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was a lie. Had every "I love you" been nothing more than a rehearsed line? Doubt crept in like a thief in the night, gnawing at the corners of my mind. I had always thought we had a strong bond, built on love and trust. But now, it felt as if those very foundations were crumbling beneath me. I looked around the room, the familiar space suddenly feeling foreign and hostile. The pictures of us that adorned the walls, smiling faces captured in time, now seemed to mock me. How could she share such intimate thoughts with Jake and still look me in the eye every day? My stomach twisted in knots as I tried to reconcile the woman I loved with the one who had penned these letters. Anger surged within me, transforming into a burning desire for revenge. The realization hit me like a cold wave. I was not just a victim in this situation, I had the power to fight back. How could she expect me to move on as if nothing had happened? This wasn't just about letters. It was about betrayal, about the trust that had been shattered. My heart raced as I thought about how to confront her. I imagined her face when I revealed what I had discovered. Would she cry? Would she beg for forgiveness? Or would she try to deny it? But deep down, I knew that a confrontation wouldn't be enough. The rage that had built up inside me was now a powerful force, propelling me toward a more calculated plan. I wanted to expose her, to make sure everyone knew what she had done. To shatter the image of our perfect life she had crafted so carefully. The thought of everyone learning the truth filled me with a dark satisfaction. She would feel the same pain I was enduring. She would be forced to confront her choices and the consequences that came with them. I felt the thrill of revenge coursing through me, igniting a fire I hadn't known existed. I imagined the looks on her friends' faces, the whispers that would follow her through the office, and the isolation she would experience as her facade crumbled. With each letter I read, my resolve grew stronger. I would not just be a passive participant in this betrayal, I would become the architect of her downfall. As I put the letters back in the box, a twisted smile crept across my face. I was no longer the wronged husband, I was a man with a mission, and the thrill of plotting my revenge was more intoxicating than any emotion I had felt in years. At that moment, I realized that I would take control of this situation, and Amy would learn the hard way what it meant to betray me. As the initial shock of discovering Amy's letters settled into a cold, hard anger, I found myself lost in memories of our life together. Each recollection played in my mind like a faded film reel, and I couldn't help but scrutinize the moments that had defined our marriage. I remembered our wedding day, how radiant she had looked, standing under the arch of flowers, promising to love me for better or worse. We were young, filled with dreams, and I thought our love was unshakable. But as I revisited those joyful memories, they began to twist into something darker. The early years of our marriage were full of passion and laughter. We traveled, explored, and shared our hopes and fears. Yet, over time, something had shifted. I noticed the subtle changes in her demeanor, the gradual withdrawal that I had brushed off as stress from work or life's responsibilities. She began spending late nights at the office more often, her phone buzzing with messages she would quickly glance at, her face unreadable. I had convinced myself that it was just a phase. She was ambitious and driven, but now I realized that my explanations had been mere excuses to avoid facing the truth. I recalled the last few months when our conversations had become stilted, the spark in her eyes dimming as she focused more on her career and less on us. I would reach out to her, trying to connect, but she often seemed distant, lost in her thoughts. I had attributed her silence to the pressures of work, believing that soon she would return to the vibrant woman I fell in love with. But now, I understood that her feelings for Jake had likely never fully vanished. The way she spoke about him with nostalgia during casual conversations, the fleeting mentions of their past, it all took on new meaning. My stomach churned as I thought back to the times I had dismissed my instincts. The late nights at the office, the secretive phone calls, the little things that had once seemed innocuous but were now glaring red flags. I had chosen to overlook the signs, desperate to maintain the illusion of our perfect life. How had I been so blind? Each memory now felt like a piece of a puzzle I was just beginning to assemble, revealing a picture I had refused to see. Amy's love for Jake wasn't just a fleeting thought, it had been lurking beneath the surface, growing and festering while I had been obliviously trying to build a future with her. I had wanted to believe that our bond was stronger than any past relationship, but clearly, I was mistaken. This realization filled me with a mix of betrayal and sorrow. I had loved her with everything I had, but in return, she had given her heart to another man, even if only in memory. The pain was suffocating, a weight that settled heavily on my chest. I could feel the anger rising again, this time directed not just at Amy but at myself for allowing this to happen. No longer could I view our relationship through rose-colored glasses. The truth was stark and unforgiving, and I had a choice to make. I could either wallow in this betrayal or harness my pain into something powerful, something that would finally put her in her place. The thought solidified my resolve. Amy had made her choices, and now it was time for me to make mine. I would not let her forget the consequences of her actions. I would make sure everyone knew the truth, and I would reclaim my sense of self through my revenge. As the weight of betrayal settled heavily in my chest, a dark sense of purpose began to take shape in my mind. I could not let Amy's actions go unpunished. The anger simmering within me demanded an outlet, and I knew exactly how to channel it. I began to formulate a plan, one that would expose her for who she truly was and ensure that she felt the consequences of her choices. The idea came to me as I paced the room, each step echoing my resolve. I would send those love letters to everyone in her life, her friends, her colleagues, even family members. Let them see the woman she had been hiding behind a mask of fidelity. Let them read her heartfelt confessions to Jake and feel the shock and betrayal that coursed through my veins. I envisioned the scene, Amy's coworkers gasping in disbelief as they read her words, the whispers that would ripple through the office, tainting her reputation forever. I could already picture her face, pale, wide-eyed, and completely exposed. The thought sent a thrill of satisfaction coursing through me. To execute this plan, I knew I had to be meticulous. I began compiling a list of everyone who mattered to her. I thought about her close friends, the ones who had supported her through everything, and her colleagues who looked up to her. I could almost hear their conversations. Did you see what Amy wrote? I can't believe she would do something like this. The gossip would spread like wildfire, and her once respected image would be reduced to rubble. Next, I needed to determine how to send the letters without revealing my identity. I thought of using a fake email account, something inconspicuous that wouldn't raise any suspicion. Perhaps I could create an anonymous blog or a shared document that could be easily accessed, making it seem like the letters had been leaked unintentionally. The more I pondered, the more possibilities I saw. I also knew I needed to time it perfectly. There was a work event coming up, a celebration that Amy had been looking forward to for weeks. It would be the ideal occasion for her colleagues to receive the letters, ensuring maximum embarrassment and chaos. I envisioned the moment she would receive the first message, the shock spreading across her face as she realized what was happening. As I sat down at my desk, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I started drafting an email that would accompany the letters, a simple message that would read like a concerned tip-off. I thought you should know who Amy is. Please see the attached letters. I grinned as I imagined the reactions that would follow. This plan would not only serve as revenge but also as a way to reclaim my power. Amy had taken so much from me: trust, love, respect, and now it was time to take something back. I would show her that her choices had consequences and that I would not be a passive victim in this narrative. With each passing moment, my resolve strengthened. I would execute this plan flawlessly. I could already feel the thrill of satisfaction waiting for me at the end, a bittersweet victory that would make her realize just how deeply she had wounded me. It was time to turn the tables and let her feel the weight of her betrayal, all while I reveled in the knowledge that I had orchestrated her downfall. With my plan taking shape, I began to prepare the necessary groundwork for executing my revenge. I knew I had to be strategic and meticulous in how I carried out my scheme. The idea of sending Amy's letters to everyone in her life filled me with a dark sense of excitement, and I wanted to make sure everything unfolded perfectly. First, I dove deep into research on how to send anonymous messages. The internet offered a plethora of resources, and I found several ways to obscure my identity. Anonymous email services, temporary phone numbers, and even third-party mailing services could help me deliver the letters without raising suspicion. I began compiling notes, carefully considering the pros and cons of each method. I wanted to ensure that Amy wouldn't suspect a thing, allowing my plan to take effect without any hitches. Realizing I couldn't execute this plan alone, I reached out to a few close friends who I knew would understand my need for vengeance. I confided in them about the betrayal I had uncovered and explained my plan in detail. They listened intently, their expressions shifting from shock to understanding as I described my vision of exposing Amy. "Are you sure about this?" one of my friends asked, concern creeping into his voice. But the burning anger I felt silenced any doubts. I nodded, my resolve unwavering. I could see the gears turning in their heads, and before long, they were brainstorming ideas on how to help me. Some suggested creating a group email account that could send the letters from a different identity, while others offered to help me with the logistics of printing and mailing the letters. Their enthusiasm fueled my determination, and soon we were working together like a covert team, united by the shared goal of delivering justice. As we plotted and prepared, I learned about a work event Amy was hosting, a party that would bring together all her colleagues, friends, and acquaintances. The news struck me like a bolt of lightning. This was the perfect moment to unleash my plan. I could already imagine the chaos that would ensue when Amy's carefully constructed world shattered in front of her peers. The timing couldn't have been better. With all of her colleagues present, the impact of my actions would be magnified. I envisioned the moment she would receive the first email, her confusion turning to horror as the realization sank in. The idea of her face, flushed with embarrassment, filled me with a sense of satisfaction. With the party date fast approaching, I felt a renewed sense of urgency. I gathered my friends and shared the details about the event, emphasizing how crucial it was to time everything perfectly. We agreed to send the letters the day before the party, allowing them to reach her colleagues just in time for the event. The anticipation of the unfolding drama sent a thrill down my spine. As the days passed, I meticulously prepared everything. I finalized the content of the email, making sure it was both discreet and impactful. I double-checked the addresses of her friends and colleagues, ensuring no one would be left out of the revelation. The closer the date came, the more electric the tension felt in the air, and the excitement among my friends only added to my own. Everything was falling into place. I had successfully laid the groundwork, enlisted my friends, and chosen the perfect moment to unleash my plan. I felt invincible, fueled by a desire for justice and a determination to reclaim my power. The stage was set, and soon, Amy would be forced to confront the consequences of her betrayal in front of everyone she held dear. The thought of it sent waves of exhilaration coursing through me. The final act of this dark drama was about to unfold. The night before the party arrived, and an electric anticipation filled the air. I could hardly focus on anything else as my friends and I gathered in my living room, buzzing with excitement. The atmosphere was charged with the thrill of revenge, and I couldn't help but smile at the thought of the chaos that would soon unfold. I had spent the day finalizing the details of the email that would accompany the love letters. I carefully crafted a message that would strike just the right note, casual enough to seem innocuous, yet loaded with the weight of betrayal. I thought you should know who Amy is. Please see the attached letters. It was simple but effective, the perfect bait to lure her colleagues into a whirlwind of drama. As the clock ticked down to the moment of reckoning, I felt a surge of adrenaline. My friends had gathered around me, their eyes alight with excitement as I prepared to send the emails. I had chosen a temporary email service that would allow me to create a fake address, ensuring that my identity remained hidden. Sitting at my desk, I took a deep breath and opened my laptop. I typed in the details of the email address, carefully avoiding anything that could be traced back to me. My heart raced as I prepared to input the list of recipients, every friend, and every colleague Amy had ever mentioned to me. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for was finally here. With a final glance at my friends, I hit the send button. A wave of exhilaration washed over me as I watched the email disappear into the digital ether. I imagined the letters reaching their destinations, each one a small bomb ready to explode in the lives of everyone Amy knew. As I leaned back in my chair, a sense of satisfaction settled over me. The anticipation of the impending fallout was intoxicating. I could already envision the reactions, the shocked gasps, the whispered conversations, the judgment in the eyes of her colleagues. I could picture Amy's confusion morphing into horror as she read the emails, her carefully constructed facade crumbling around her. For the first time in what felt like ages, I felt in control. No longer was I the victim, I had turned the tables, and the power dynamics had shifted dramatically. The thrill of plotting my revenge was like a drug, and I found myself relishing the thought of how it would all play out. As the evening wore on, we shared drinks and laughed, the atmosphere buzzing with excitement. I kept replaying the moment I hit send in my mind, each replay amplifying the satisfaction I felt. My friends encouraged me, discussing how Amy would react and how her colleagues would perceive her after this revelation. Their enthusiasm fueled my own, and we became lost in a shared vision of the drama that would soon unfold. As I lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, I replayed every detail of my plan. The letters were sent, the stage was set, and now all I had to do was wait. The anticipation hung thick in the air, and I could hardly contain my excitement. Tomorrow would bring the reckoning I had been waiting for, and I couldn't wait to watch it all unfold. The thought of Amy facing the consequences of her actions filled me with a dark thrill, a sense of justice that I had been craving. I was ready for the chaos that was about to erupt, and it would be glorious. The day of the party dawned bright and clear, but inside me, a storm of anticipation raged. I could hardly focus on anything other than the knowledge that my plan was set in motion. I had spent the morning with my friends, sharing laughs and reveling in the impending chaos. Their excitement mirrored my own, making the atmosphere electric. Just before I left for the party, I received a text from one of my friends who worked with Amy. "Have you heard? There's some wild gossip going around about Amy. I think she's in trouble." My heart raced at the thought, a wicked grin spreading across my face. I knew my plan was already working, and it hadn't even begun to unfold in its entirety yet. As I arrived at the venue, I scanned the crowd of guests mingling, drinks in hand. Laughter filling the air. I could see Amy in the distance, her smile bright and her laughter infectious as she chatted with her colleagues. But I knew that all of that was about to change. The anticipation was almost unbearable. Then, it happened. I watched as Amy's expression shifted from joy to confusion, her eyes narrowing as she fished her phone from her pocket. She read something that made her face pale. I could see the color drain from her cheeks, and my heart raced with exhilaration. The moment she received the notification of the emails was like a slow-motion scene in a movie. I could practically feel the panic radiating from her. She stepped away from her group of friends, her brows furrowing as she furiously tapped on her phone. I could only imagine the thoughts racing through her mind. Had someone sent her something embarrassing? Had they discovered her past with Jake? The panic was palpable, and I couldn't help but relish the sight of her dismay. As she moved further away, I took a few steps closer, trying to catch snippets of her frantic conversation. I overheard her murmur, "What do you mean, love letters? Who sent this?" Her voice trembled with disbelief, and I could see her trying to piece together what was happening. Each passing moment filled me with satisfaction, knowing that she was about to face the fallout of her actions. I watched her pace, her fingers flying over her phone as she likely attempted to reach out to her friends for support. Her once confident demeanor was now replaced with anxiety. and I reveled in the fact that I had orchestrated this moment. It was a sweet taste of justice, and the rush of satisfaction coursed through me. Every panic-stricken expression and every frantic gesture brought me immense pleasure. I had turned her world upside down, and the feeling was intoxicating. I couldn't help but smile as I observed her becoming increasingly flustered. A woman who had once held all the power was now left scrambling to defend herself. As the minutes dragged on, I could see Amy's friends approaching her. Concern etched on their faces. Their whispers only deepened her distress. I imagined them reading the letters, their expressions shifting from confusion to shock, and my heart raced at the thought of the fallout that would ensue. At that moment, I felt invincible. While Amy struggled to make sense of the chaos I had unleashed, I stood on the sidelines, a silent observer enjoying the spectacle. Her discomfort was a beautiful symphony to my ears, and I could hardly contain my glee. I had planned this meticulously. And now the fruits of my labor were ripening before me. This was only the beginning. The party would soon become a cacophony of revelations, and I was here to witness it all unfold. I leaned against the wall, watching the scene before me with a satisfied grin. Amy had unknowingly walked into her reckoning, and I couldn't wait to see how she would handle the storm I had created. As the party buzzed with laughter and conversation, the tension surrounding Amy became palpable. Her friends had gathered around her, their faces a mixture of confusion and concern. I could see the gears turning in her mind, and I knew she was piecing together the clues. The realization that I was behind this chaos was inevitable. It was only a matter of time. Suddenly, Amy's voice broke through the noise, rising above the din of the party. "What the hell is going on? Who sent those letters?" Her eyes were wild, darting from one friend to another, and I could see the cracks in her composure. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to her, the weight of her anger crashing down like a tidal wave. As the whispers began to ripple through the crowd, I felt a thrill of excitement. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment she would confront the consequences of her actions. I watched as she paced the floor, her hands clenched into fists, the fire in her eyes igniting with every word. "Is this some kind of sick joke? I can't believe someone would stoop so low," she shouted, her voice trembling with fury. The air crackled with tension as everyone stared, caught between shock and curiosity. She spun around, her gaze locking onto one of her colleagues who had just read the letters. "Did you read those? I can't believe you'd believe that nonsense. It's nothing but old feelings I never acted on." The desperation in her voice was unmistakable, and I savored the way her carefully crafted image began to unravel. "Who sent them, Amy? Was it you?" I could hear the accusation in her friend's voice, laced with disbelief. "What's going on between you and Jake?" The questions hung heavily in the air, and I couldn't help but relish the chaos. Amy's face flushed crimson as she struggled to maintain her composure. "It doesn't matter who sent them. They're ancient history," she snapped, her voice breaking. But the damage was already done. The shock of her old love letters had ignited a firestorm of gossip and speculation. People were whispering and pointing, exchanging incredulous glances, their previous notions of her shattered. I watched, barely able to contain my excitement, as Amy's bravado began to crumble under the weight of scrutiny. "You think this is funny?" she spat, her gaze scanning the crowd until it landed on me. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The intensity of her stare pierced through the chaos, and I could see the realization dawning on her. "Paul, this was you, wasn't it? You did this." I maintained my calm demeanor, a smirk creeping onto my face. "What can I say? I thought you deserved to be reminded of the truth." My words dripped with satisfaction, and I could see the fury igniting in her eyes. "How could you do this to me?" she yelled, her voice cracking with emotion. "After everything we've been through, you'd ruin me like this? This isn't just a prank, it's malicious." The room buzzed with tension, the eyes of her colleagues boring into us as the drama unfolded. I reveled in the spectacle. She was a beautiful, tragic figure at the center of this storm. Her once cherished image now lay in tatters, exposed for all to see. "Malicious?" I countered, my tone mocking. "You brought this on yourself, Amy. Maybe if you hadn't held onto those letters, we wouldn't be here right now." She stepped closer, her voice lowering to a hiss. "You think this makes you the good guy? You're just proving how petty and vindictive you are. This isn't the end of this." I could see the fire in her eyes, but my heart raced with exhilaration. She was cornered, and I was reveling in her desperation. The audience around us seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next move in this unfolding drama. I'm just giving you a taste of your own medicine, I replied coolly. Maybe now you'll think twice before trying to rewrite history. The crowd murmured, their attention riveted on our confrontation. As Amy's emotions bubbled to the surface, the facade she had meticulously crafted began to dissolve. I could feel the weight of the moment, the tension stretching taut between us like a live wire. Consider this my final act of kindness, I said, savoring the words. I'm letting everyone see the truth. You can't hide behind a mask anymore. Her face twisted in fury, but beneath it, I could see the flicker of fear. She was unraveling, and it was a sight I never wanted to end. I had set the stage for her downfall, and now I was determined to watch her world collapse. This was my moment of victory, and I wouldn't let it slip away. Paul, please, you have to listen to me. Amy's voice was laced with urgency, but my mind was a storm of anger and betrayal. We stood outside the venue, the pulsating music from the party a stark contrast to the tension between us. I could feel the weight of the moment, the gravity of the words I was about to unleash. Listen? I spat, incredulous. To what? More excuses? I couldn't believe this was happening. Just hours ago, we had been surrounded by laughter and celebration, and now, everything had collapsed into chaos. A few old letters don't define what we have, she insisted, desperation creeping into her tone. They're from the past, Paul. You have to understand. I took a step back, shaking my head slowly. No, Amy. You don't get to play that card. You can't dismiss this as mere nostalgia. The letters were dated, just 2 weeks ago. My voice was steady, but inside, I felt like I was on shaky ground, wrestling with emotions I couldn't fully articulate. Those letters were a mistake, she exclaimed, her voice rising. I was just reminiscing about a time when I felt lost. It didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything? I echoed, incredulous. You don't write love letters to your ex unless it means something. You don't pour out your heart and soul and then just shrug it off as nostalgia. She opened her mouth, her eyes searching mine for understanding, but I couldn't give her that. My heart raced as I recalled the words she had penned, the longing, the memories of Jake, the what-ifs she had expressed. Those words cut deeper than any knife. I know it sounds bad, she said, her voice softer now, almost pleading. But my feelings for you are real. Those letters, they were just a fleeting moment of weakness. I love you, Paul. You have to believe that. Believe it? I felt a bitter laugh escape my lips. How can I believe that when you're holding onto those feelings for someone else? When you're writing him letters and thinking about what might have been? Love isn't just about the words you say, it's about your actions, and your actions tell me everything I need to know. Her expression shifted, frustration mingling with despair. I was confused, okay? I didn't know how to process everything. But I want to be with you. Can't you see that? Wanting to be with me isn't enough, Amy, I replied, my voice firm. You made your choice when you decided to reach out to Jake. You let those feelings linger and wrote them down like they were something worth holding on to. That's not love, that's betrayal. Tears glistened in her eyes as she looked away, clearly struggling to hold back her emotions. I could see her trying to formulate a response, but the words were lost. The silence that hung between us felt heavy, almost suffocating. I can't just pretend it didn't happen, I continued, my heart pounding with the weight of my anger and hurt. You can't expect me to just forget that you poured your heart out to someone else while we were together. That's not how it works. I never meant to hurt you. She cried, her voice breaking. I thought I could move past it. I didn't want to ruin what we had. But you did ruin it, I said coldly. You can't take that back. You can't erase those words or the feelings behind them. The reality of our situation settled around us, a chasm that felt insurmountable. I could see the understanding dawning in her eyes, the realization that things would never be the same. I felt a sense of finality in the air, a sense that this moment was a breaking point. Paul, she started, but I held up my hand to stop her. I can't do this anymore, Amy. I can't keep pretending everything is fine while you're still hung up on someone else. I need to think about what's best for me now. And right now, that means stepping away from you. I turned, the weight of my decision pressing down on me like a heavy blanket. I could hear her voice calling after me, but I refused to look back. There was nothing left to say. I was done, and as I walked away from her, I felt the final threads of our relationship unraveling, the love we once had slipping away into the night. I leaned against the wall just outside the main party area, watching as the scene unfolded. The chatter of my colleagues echoed in the background. But my focus was entirely on Amy. She stood in the middle of a circle of her friends and coworkers, her face a mask of panic and anger. "So, you wrote those letters to Jake?" One of her colleagues, Jessica, asked, crossing her arms. The tone in Jessica's voice was a mixture of disbelief and disappointment, and I couldn't help but smirk. Amy opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. She was caught in a web of her own making, and I felt a thrill of satisfaction at her discomfort. This was the moment I had envisioned, the moment when she would be forced to confront the consequences of her choices. "Come on, Amy," Jessica pressed, her voice rising. "You can't expect us to just ignore what's in those letters. They're deeply personal. How could you do that to Paul?" The murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. I watched as Amy's expression shifted from anger to vulnerability, her bravado crumbling under the weight of their scrutiny. I could see her glancing around, searching for support, but all she found were judgmental eyes. "It was a mistake," she finally exclaimed, desperation lacing her words. "They were old feelings that I didn't mean to bring up again." "But you wrote them recently," another coworker chimed in, a hint of accusation in their tone. "What does that say about how you feel?" I leaned in closer, straining to catch every word, relishing the unfolding drama. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel the satisfaction bubbling up inside me. This was retribution, and I had orchestrated every detail to perfection. "I thought you were better than this, Amy," Jessica said, her disappointment evident. "This isn't just some fling. You're married. How could you betray Paul like that?" Each word pierced through Amy, and I saw the color drain from her face. I could almost taste her humiliation, and it fueled my anger. She had built a life, a facade of love and trust, only to let it all unravel in the face of her choices. "I never meant to hurt anyone," Amy pleaded, but the damage was already done. The doubts and suspicions were etched into the faces of her colleagues. I felt a twisted sense of triumph as they continued to question her loyalty and her integrity. As the evening wore on, I retreated to a quieter corner, but I could still hear the whispers swirling around Amy. Her colleagues had become her judges, and she was on trial for the decisions that had led to this moment. My thoughts drifted to family. I knew my parents were going to hear about this. How could they not? The last thing I wanted was to have to explain my wife's betrayal to them. When I thought of my mother's disappointment, it made my stomach turn. As the party drew to a close, I spotted my brother, Jake, yes, the same name as her ex, chatting with our parents. They were likely discussing the events of the evening, and I could see my mother's brows furrowing in concern as she gestured toward Amy, who was now isolated and upset. "Did you hear what happened?" my father asked me, his voice low but tinged with disbelief. "I can't believe she would do something like this." "I know," I replied, forcing the words past the knot in my throat. "It's like she's a completely different person." "Your mother is worried about you, son," Jake chimed in, glancing at me with a serious expression. "This isn't just about Amy anymore, it's about what this means for our family." I felt the weight of those words settles on my chest. It was one thing to deal with my own emotions, but now I had to face the fallout from my wife's actions within our family. I could see how they had begun to turn against her. The disappointment etched on their faces. My mother approached, her voice gentle but firm. "We've always loved Amy like a daughter, Paul. But this is hard to understand. You need to take care of yourself." Her words resonated, reminding me of the bond we once shared as a family, now tainted by Amy's choices. I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. I didn't know what the future held, but the path ahead was looking increasingly uncertain. As I watched Amy standing alone, tears glistening in her eyes, I felt a pang of empathy, however fleeting it might be. But it was quickly overshadowed by the satisfaction that coursed through me. She was facing the consequences of her actions, and for once, I didn't have to intervene. Amy's shame was now public knowledge, and I was content to let her experience the fallout of her decisions. It was bittersweet, but it was justice, and somehow, it felt like the closure I had needed. The days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, I could see Amy's world crumbling around her. I watched from a distance as she lost friends, faced awkward encounters with colleagues, and battled the fallout from the letters I had so meticulously sent out. I felt a strange sense of power surge through me, an intoxicating mix of satisfaction and liberation. I found myself smiling at the subtle shifts in the office dynamic. Colleagues who once embraced Amy with open arms now glanced at her with pity or disdain. It was as if the veil of respect had been lifted, and the truth of her betrayal lay bare for everyone to see. I relished the idea that I had orchestrated this. The more she struggled, the more I savored each moment. One afternoon, I bumped into Jessica at the coffee machine, and she couldn't hide her disdain as she poured her coffee. "Can you believe Amy?" she said, shaking her head. "I thought she was better than that. Now, it's just embarrassing to be associated with her." "Yeah," I replied casually, my heart pounding with a strange thrill. It's hard to watch someone fall so far. As we chatted, I caught glimpses of Amy in the distance, her posture slumped, her laughter absent from conversations that used to surround her. It was surreal. A part of me had expected to feel guilty about her suffering, but instead, I felt a release. A door had closed, and I was standing firmly on the other side. The tipping point came one evening when I returned home to find Amy sitting on the couch, her eyes red and puffy from crying. I could tell she had been trying to muster the strength to talk to me. But I felt nothing, no sympathy, no love, only an overwhelming sense of indifference. "Paul," she began, her voice cracking. "We need to talk." I raised an eyebrow, crossing my arms. "About what? The letters? Or how you've completely lost the respect of everyone you once cared about?" Her eyes flashed with hurt, but I felt nothing. I had come too far to let her pull me back into the emotional chaos that had defined our relationship. "I just want you to understand," she said, her voice trembling. "I never meant for it to go this far." I leaned against the wall, letting her words wash over me without a hint of remorse. "You made your choice, Amy. You chose to reach out to Jake, and now you're dealing with the consequences. I don't think there's anything left to discuss." The silence that followed was thick and palpable, and for the first time, I realized how liberating it felt. I didn't need to apologize or justify my actions. I had taken control of my narrative, and in doing so, I had stripped her of hers. "I'm not the one who needs to understand," I continued, the corner of my mouth lifting into a slight smirk. "I'm the one who gets to sit back and enjoy the show as you lose everything: friends, respect, and, most importantly, my love." Her expression crumbled, and as she turned away, I felt a surge of triumph. The battle had been long, but I had emerged victorious. At that moment, I understood that this was no longer just about revenge, it was a game I had won. I had dismantled the life we had built, and now I could walk away without a shred of guilt. The love I once felt for her had faded, replaced by a cold satisfaction that fueled my every move. As I turned to leave, I caught a final glimpse of her reflection in the window. She looked small, defeated. And for the first time in a long while, I felt free. The game was over, and I had come out on top, no longer shackled by the past. It was time to move forward, to embrace this new beginning. Leaving her behind is nothing more than a lesson learned.